It's time for looting. We're bringing the pirates back, boys. Whoa! GW has released the Freebooter Krew. So here today, you're going to get my thoughts and detachment breakdown. So what we'll cover is my detachment and thoughts, the enhancements, the stratagems, the support of the WAAAGH, the unit combinations, how I think this actually wins. I'll try to give an outline of tempo of the looted objective just to kind of break down how I think you would be declaring it for the first 3 turns. Then the pros and cons, and then we'll end with the live comments because, like always, this is live, lads. Whoa! So let's get stuck in with everybody here. Of course, I'll be paying attention. So if you want to say anything or give any thoughts, be sure to be in that. But with that being said, I'm actually a bit excited about this. When I first heard we were getting another detachment, I was like, man, we already have 9, now it's going to be 10, and there's so much overlap, and to a degree there still is some overlap. Of course, I never lie or over exaggerate things, so of course there are some obvious frustrations with the detachment if you've played it, but we'll talk through it, and I'm genuinely enjoying when I have played it. So shout out to everyone who's here. Shout out to the Gets Live. Like I'm saying, we're getting a bunch of walls in the chat. People are talking about they're playing it. So let's get right into it so that I don't take too long on this, you Gets, because I've been away because I was a one-eyed Get for a while. So here we have the detachment. Here be loot. So at the start of the battle round, select one objective marker. Until the start of the next battle round, the objective marker is your looted objective. Each time a model in the orc army, whether it's an infantry, mounted, or walker unit, makes an attack, that attack has the sustained 1 ability. If either or both of the following are true, the model's unit is within range of your looted objective, that attacking target is within range of your looted objective. So that means whether you're standing on it or if your opponent's standing on it, then you get the buff. So there are a lot of conditions on this. Of course, the fact that it's the start of the battle round is the frustrating part. It does heavily favor you going first, but there are still ways to play it. And when we look at the units and the enhancements and some of the other stuff, we'll talk about how we can keep getting stuck in, having a good time. First thoughts on there right away is that we appreciate that it's both phases, right? You can actually get sustained in shooting and fighting. So depending on how you're pushing or how you're standing, you might use it as I'm going to run out, throw a unit from a truck onto an objective and shoot off it, or I'm going to go attack my enemy that's on objective over there and get my sustain, maybe fishtail one of your mobs back to the big looted objective so that you can activate your sustain when you're on it. And there's a bunch of other ways. So let's keep going because we have things that we have to include in this because, as we know, there were a lot of criteria to that detachment, which is usually what the buzz is about. So let's talk about the enhancements. What I will say is I'm a little disappointed, only because they're not that compelling, but they're good enough that you can consider them, which is a pro and a con for some Gets because it means you're not spending a bunch of points in your enhancements, right? So I should have included the points. Forgive me, lads. I do have the points in here when I was setting it up. I don't know why I got so excited and didn't do that, but I'll just say the enhancement costs right now real quick as we get through this. So starting off for the captain, which is just a war boss enhancement. This one is pretty much never going to be taken unless you only have like 10 points left over. War boss model, he picks a unit, it's in 12, suffers D3, is no longer battle shock. Not really that compelling. It could come into effect maybe if you're playing 20-man units or something. That could be cool. Nonetheless, nothing too much to think about there. The enhancement that is interesting for the most part, catching people's attention, is Get Spotter Squig. Now that is 20 points. The issue that most people kind of got annoyed with here is that it's the same exact enhancement as Dread Mob has, but you're paying double the cost here. Okay, so it's 20 points, but there are some units to consider here. One, right off the bat, is the Ludas, right? So everybody's looking, well, I got Ludas. They already get a buff if they're shooting on an objective or you add a unit that's on an objective, excuse me. So if they're shooting at something that's on an objective and that unit is also standing on my looted objective, then I can re-roll the hit and get sustain, and then also I have ignore covers. Wow, that helps a lot with the Ludus output. That's always the first thought of most people's heads. Of course, they have the custom Mega Blasters or the rockets on the spanners as well. They appreciate that, and whatever character you're attaching, whether it's a SAG or a mech or whatever, but a big mech. There are other units that we'll talk about though that can appreciate this enhancement. So yeah, we'll get to that as well. We have WAAAGH magic map. So this is simply a redeploy. This is 25 points, which a little more than I would want, but hey, it's redeploy. Now, this is a restricted redeploy because it's only for infantry. Now, when we talk about what we're going to be doing with this attachment and how it functions, you can actually still make this work. But it is a choice because it is restricted to infantry, right? So if it was non-restricted to any unit, kind of like tactical brigade, it'd be way more interesting. It'd be almost auto take on most lists. But because it's only infantry, you have to kind of build units into your list sometimes that want to take advantage of this. Then we go into the bionic workshop. So this is the enhancement that generally gets the most attention because the attention right now is on Gaz and his boys. So if you can stack enhancements from the Big Mac or the Pain Boy onto 20 boys for Gaz, well, then you're getting even more buffs. This is 20 points for the 15, sorry, 15 points for the Bionic Workshop, which is why it's also interesting because it's cheap, relatively speaking, 15 points. The issue is that it's random, right? So whenever you don't get like an assured outcome, it kind of takes away from its reliability on a competitive setting, because the key to being competitive is being a reliable game plan or outcome, and being able to perform regularly for 5 rounds plus. So the fact that your buff is essentially not reliable at all, and generally you're taking it on a Gaz unit, like I said, but let's talk about it. It's bionic legs. You have 2 to the movement. If it's on a D3, so on a 1, you get 2 movement. On a 2, you add 1 strength, so this would take the boys up to 5 at all times, and then 6. And then bionic would be you get +1 to melees for the weapon skill. So this is cool because since it's weapon skill, it does mean that it can help your power claws in a way that Gaz himself does not on his own. So the weapon skill means that it'll be go to a 3+, and then Gaz giving +1 to hit would mean that power claw will be hitting on a 2+. So that's pretty sick because the Pain Boy costs so much. So you do want to get some value out of his actual power claws attack when he gets stuck in. And then the Big Mac, I mean, the fact that he has the Drilla would be really sick if he gets in and gets those punches. So not reliable. They do have some interesting components to them. Let's talk about the stratagems. We'll start off with, in my opinion, the somewhat less interesting, and then to the more interesting one. Doesn't mean they suck. Doesn't mean they don't have any play. Don't start freaking out. So we go to the first one that I think is a bit of a letdown that most people are coming around to, is the rolling loot heap. I think this is called the rolling heap of trying to take my CP. So your shooting phase, you select 1 flash gets that has not been shot this phase. Till the end of the phase, you have an anti 4+ ability. So if it was monster 4+, cool, but it's not. If it was also you ignore cover, monster 4 anti 4+ vehicle, cool. But because there are no ways for 1, there's flash gets to ever get a leader in this detachment. 2, no stratagems or other ways to get them to ignore cover or increase their AP. It means that the flash gets are going to just simply be falling flat to the large majority of targets that they want to be shooting at with this stratagem. Now, are there some places that it might come into play? Sure, let's say that it's like a Space Marine Land Speeder, the new ones, right? Maybe they're like 12 wounds or something. Okay, maybe a 10 to get man unit might shoot at that, right? Maybe it's a Necron Doomsday Arc, right? Those things are like T8 or something. So there are some chances, right? But when we go back to the utility of all the stratagems, how you're building around your list and such, this strat to me just ends up kind of like being a little bit of hyper situational, if not downright just not going to be using it for my CP, rather use it on something else the majority of those games, even in those units that I gave you as choices, right? Because the Doomsday Arc has a lot of wounds, so being able to chip it when you're a majority heavy combat list, that there could be a factor on there, right? So I'm not trying to discourage people that are excited to do it. I'm just saying that you're going to be using a lot of CP for other stuff already. Next, we have Crump and Run. Now, this is only this far down the list for me because the first 2 stratagems are so obvious, and because this is, again, one of those circumstantial ones. That doesn't mean it's bad, because getting a reactive move to fall back, to break enemies' line of fire, to get in the way of maybe an enemy's deep striking units, right? Because people forget, if I make line contact into you and I get into your lines and then you fall back, but then I just make a normal move, but decide, hey, I don't care that I'm going to die anyways. I'm going to take up more of your space and stop your strategic reserves from coming in. Okay, cool. I could fall back into a transport. Maybe you touch my tank, you touch my tank busters, and I can just jump out and get back into the truck that I disembarked from to get my lines of fire, for example. So there are ways that this is cool. Crump and run can come into play. So yeah, the fact that we like about this is that it's one orc unit. That means it works on any of the units that you have in this. So if it's a walker or whatever it may be, it's no restriction. So that's cool too. Are interesting buffs that can happen here. Like I said, it is circumstantial though. Doesn't mean it's bad. Just talking about it, getting through them real quick. So then we go to bash and grab. Now I want to love this, and just to be honest, the strat in Mordaka is better because this one is very circumstantial. So in the fight phase, one orc unit that is not selected to fight till the end of the phase, each time this model makes a target within your looted objective, you can re-roll the wound. So it's kind of one of those win more conditions. That doesn't mean it's bad. I absolutely love it for some of the other units we're going to use here and that I'm going to suggest and I've been playing with. So I like the strat a lot. Re-roll wounds is sick for orcs. We love seeing that kind of ability. But the fact that it's the looted objective means it's, you know, you got, and the enemy has to be standing on it, right? So you can't fishtail your own unit back to the looted objective and crump someone. So, you know, if you're playing against Tyranids and then they're like, I got a Norn Emissary, you're like, cool, I know what you're doing. I know where I'm looting. Whoa, right? That's cool. Totally love that. I'm in love with that idea. Catan's kind of the same thing where you're like, you know, and I know where you're going. I'm gonna knock them teeth out. You get, so that's fine. But other than that, right? Other than the enemy trying to stat check you in those cases, then it's like, okay, then you can't do it. So just keeping you in mind, just so you know, don't use it when your unit's on it and the enemy's not. But if they're on it, go knock the teeth out, because I absolutely love this stratagem for the units that I'm going to play with and to be suggesting. Then we go to deck fraggers. So this stratagem, a little slept on by most people. I know orcs love it because orc players are ridiculous human beings and they like to just put blast on everything, your green skin. But this is actually pretty cool. Your shooting phase, one orc unit from your army did not like to shoot this phase. Until the end of the phase, each time a model in your unit targets an infantry unit with the ranged ability, that weapon has blast. Now, what I like about this is it's not that conditional, right? The condition is I'm shooting at infantry. So it's like, okay, I can't do it to other orc players if they're using squigs. All right, cool, right? Because you have to shoot infantry. But mind you, this doesn't say that it's restricted to only our unit keywords. It just says one orc unit that hasn't shot. So deck the fraggers is pretty awesome when you think about maybe firing deck, when you think about something that was let down before, right? The flash kits were pretty let down before about the other stratagem, but flash kits do appreciate deck the fraggers. They already have a good volume of shots. This makes it even better, and then they already have sustain and it's not circumstantial. So this is one of those, you know, combos you can actually line up without that. So we do like that. You can make any weapon and any of these units that we're going to be talking about, because we're going to talk about each. We're going to talk about the walkers, the squid, everything. But nonetheless, so you can make vehicles get blast, you can make walkers get blast, you can make any unit get blast, and that's pretty hilarious. So there's a bunch of units that actually want to appreciate that strat. It's so slept on, but we'll talk about that more when we talk about the actual units that we're going to be using with. But I like this strat. Very fun, and it's one of those that I'll use it maybe at least once a game if I can. Then we go to the top two stratagems, in my opinion, the ones that really carry all the weight and really get us to play this detachment are these two stratagems. Anybody that I talk to that's looking to play this detachment, if they're somewhat competitive and looking to win more games than they lose, usually these two stratagems are the main components. If they are just a git that's looking to have fun, they're usually looking at the fraggers because they're having fun with that one, right? So that's the cool part. So boarding rush, your movement phase, one orc unit that's not selected to move until the end of the phase, your unit makes, instead of making an advance, you just move auto 6. That's fantastic. And the timing of it, right? Thank goodness this is not so annoying like in the command phase, right? Because I love Here We Go, but it's Here We Go from Warhorde, for example, is restricted command phase and restricted to infantry. This is restricted to nothing but an orc unit, and it's in your movement phase. So I appreciate that. One, if I need to stage up a transport very early, just making some obvious targets, right? If I in a fun get, I just need to get this truck into a very safe position. I can auto advance even a truck into position. That's fantastic. I can auto advance my obviously any unit that I need on the wall to get into position. Fantastic. But there's other units and combos and circumstances that we'll talk about why you will use this strat. But movement wins games. So any game or any ability that allows you to move 12 inches flat on your infantry or auto advance 6 on your mounted and your walkers and your vehicles, that's just sick, because again, this is not restricted to infantry or anything like that. So that's another reason why it's so compelling and so interesting, because you're like, all right, I can make this work if I think it through, since it's not so restricted. Then we go to grab and bash. This arguably is the reason you play this detachment. And if it's not, it's because you're just probably playing like a high skirmish MSU version where you just have a ton of units everywhere. But for the most part, this one is what people are kind of building their bits and bobs around. So grab and bash. Your command phase, 1 orc unit, excluding Gretchen, which is obviously because of Zod. Until the start of your next command phase, your WAAAGH is active, even if you already declared the WAAAGH. This means any of your abilities are in effect. Also, for anybody that's wondering, I did pull up the FAQ because I still, to this day, get people that try to wonder about this. And the FAQ asked the question, if a unit has an ability that checks the WAAAGH is active in order to take effect, like your Mega Knob timing, does the effect of the rule make the effect active for the WAAAGH, i.e. bully detachment? The answer is yes. So just for the FAQ, if anybody's wondering, yes, your Gaz banner goes off, your Gorkonaut abilities go off, your Mega Knobs abilities go off. All of that stuff happens when you utilize this. Mind you, you have to be standing on the objective in your command phase, right? So you're choosing that one at the start of the battle round, and then you need to make sure you actually end up standing there. That means whatever you're putting there is generally going to be already kind of tough if you're trying to pull this off, or just be able to stage somewhere safe and then launch off. But this stratagem is used for 2 things to simplify it. 1, I'm launching off it, obviously, because I'm trying to declare a wall. Or 2, I'm projecting Gaz's banner ability. So like I said, there's the FAQ. Let's move to talking about the units. Look at the chats real quick. You guys looking excited. 30 Ludas with 3 shock attack guns. Not my cup of tea, but some gets might want to try to get off on that. That's a good one. What's up, you gets? Fraggers. Yeah, all of a sudden people getting 100 shots. Yeah, no, we're going to be talking about those silly ways you can stack all those fragger stuff out there, right? Whoa, what's up, J. Hugh? So this is a live chat, guys, if you're watching back on this, because this is how we do it here. I'm not behind an edit button. Whoa. So we have walkers / transports. Just kind of threw them on here to incorporate them into the conversation. Even though, to remind anybody, I'm aware the transports do not get the sustain or the detachment abilities, but we'll be talking about the unit in general because you'll still be using it in this detachment, the transports a lot. So just to get walkers off the table, I'll be upfront. I'm not trying to sell you on them in the competitive aspect, but I know some UGITs will be using them and want to use them, and that's totally fine. We're here for it. That's why we're going to talk about it. But I know, just saying, walkers in this detachment, I don't think got enough support to be valid maybe at the most competitive level. Doesn't mean I won't play them, enjoy them, and do whatever I want to do with them. So just speaking transparently. So let's go forward with this. We got, starting off, the Death Tread. Now, there's always the argument that I could just bring a Death Tread, put it in strategic reserves. It comes around the side of the table. And maybe it even strums into strategic reserves, can stand on an objective, and then the following turn I can give it a wall and it can go run away. Cool. That's optional. The other fun things that are optional here, if I choose to put custom Mega Blasters on it, it runs out onto an objective. The objective is looted. I then get sustain off it, and I shoot at a target that's blast. Typically, this ideal would be elite infantry, for example. So you would look at some kind of elite infantry unit. You would either have custom Mega Blasters or Scorches. You would pop the Fragger's ability, and then each one of those weapons would become blast. So of course rockets already have it, but custom Mega Blasters are cool because they already have 3 shots apiece. So if you're taking 3 or 4 of those, that can get quite out of hand for the opponent. There aren't, ways to reroll the hit roll and such, but that's okay because you're not trying to stack too much abilities on this. You're just appreciating the sustain, and you don't need to take double hazardous on it for that reason. So I do appreciate it in that. Of course, there's a little conversation there that you could bring more melee component, and then re-rolling wounds would be amazing because the claws are flat 3 damage, and they are wounding a lot of things on even 2s, 3s. So you're going to get a lot of value out of that for just like 100% hyper efficiency on actually wounding capability. Not necessarily recommending them just because there's not a ton of support there. But there is something to be said about 1 Def Dread auto advancing 6, like you're playing a 1,000-point game or something, right, guys? Because this is to everybody. This isn't just to the 2,000-point people playing. You're playing 1,000 points, 500, 1,200, whatever. Your Def Dread's around base. So he's getting around that auto advance 6 greatly. He appreciates that. Doesn't have assault weapons like that, so you can't appreciate and shoot, but we're talking about getting stuck in. Speaking of getting stuck in, we have the Killer Cans. So as much as I love Killer Cans, you guys know I'm a little Killer Can lover. I always put them up on there. I give them good reason. I cannot suggest them in this detachment because there's no access to assault as well necessarily. There's no assault, but I'm saying I can't necessarily suggest them. For smaller games, would I? Yes. Why? Because I can give a unit the WAAAGH that doesn't require a leader, and I can just put a big fat unit on an objective, say, hey, are you going to kill them? You'll probably kill a couple of them. Then I'll pop the whole unit into a WAAAGH and then get into that. Giving them auto advance 6 to get in a fight, that could be pretty sweet. But the fact that you don't have assault here, which you can gain in Dread Mob, and you do have access to in more DACA, means that I kind of still just feel like my Killer Cans fell off. If they did find a place, it's because of their toughness saturation and a blade of wounds, not necessarily because they have good synchronizing with this detachment. The reroll wounds are sweet, so if they do get an objective in a fight, they have sustain unless it's looted, and then they can reroll wounds. That's amazing for just about any orc unit, especially when they have a bunch of damage 3 punches. So those are the conditions on Killer Cans. I would suggest smaller games, not really larger games, for both of those walkers, to be fair. Then we go on to Morkana, another one. I don't want to be a hater on it. Now, another thing I should say is, the Killer Cans already, they're for the most part, their best weapons, like Gratsukas and rockets, already have frag or have blast, right? So they don't need that. And then we go to the Morkana. Morkana, in my opinion, again, not enough synergy, because even if I am giving them a WAAAGH for 1 CP, they don't have assault, so they're not going to advance away from me. They're just gaining +1 to hit. If I can still stand on the objective, that's cool for sustain, but they don't have other buffs to buff their other weapons, and their weapons are already kind of blast already, and not enough weapons that are strong enough to use fraggers, in my opinion. Just speaking matter, frankly. So I think Morkana falls off a little behind the Gorkana in my advice. I would rather stage up the Morkana, declare a WAAAGH, auto advance 6, hope he survives and can end up doing something again. I really just like the auto advance 6 from him. He's pretty slow with his native movement. So you could have fun where you use him for his transport capability, right? If you don't want to pay for a battle wagon, for example, and you just feel like bringing more Titanic models, cool. He only moves 8 base. You can auto advance him 6 after he disembarks some Mega Knobs, because that's the cool thing about him. He can actually embark Mega Knobs. And he can embark Storm Boys. So if you use him as his transport capability, then he auto advance 6s away, runs maybe onto the enemy's natural expansion or the middle objective, and the enemy's on it, or he stands on it, then he could shoot his volume of gun. That's pretty sweet. I like that. So I slightly suggest or recommend the Gorkana a little more. Then we go to everybody's favorite, the Stomper. So very straightforward. This gets stands on your home objective, and you can choose fraggers for him. I want to say his main def cannons are already a frag. I believe the hypersonic, like the super rockets, are ready frag. Blast. So it just means that you get to shoot all his big shooters, his Gatling weapon, all that stuff with frag. I don't think I recommend that more than Dread Mob, or I'm not even sure if I recommended that much more than do I? Did I recommend it more than Mordaka? I haven't really thought about that. But to be honest, I think Stompa goes best in Dread Mob. Just my opinion for the stacking abilities. But if you don't want to kill yourself, you want to use all your guns, go ahead. Let them stay on your home objective. You just make it rain dock on them boys. But another thing here is the transport we're going to talk about. So a lot of people want to hear more about fraggers. Here we go. You can stack fraggers on your truck or your battle wagon utilizing firing deck and the fragger stratagem. And then you can have a mech nearby. Mech can poke the truck or the transport itself, and then you have firing deck. So you can end up having your looters poke out. They have 8 looters in your unit. They'll get 3 shots apiece. Natively, they'll be hitting on 6s. They do not get to data sheet ability. Never forget that. You cannot use the data sheet ability within the transport, but you can use the weapons ability. So if it's a flash gate unit, then the flash gate can use their sustained, while they're firing deck within that. So speaking, just so people understand. So you can put the Ludas in there, the 8 Ludas, they get their 3 shots base. You gave them fraggers, maybe it's a 10-man unit, you get another 2 shots per one. And then the custom mega blasters that maybe would be in that unit, get another +2, for example. So that could end up being awesome firing deck potential. People are sticking 2 5-man units of flash kits within a truck. You could do that as well, and then maybe you give it +1 to hit from behind a wall, tip the truck out, give it fraggers, boom, just even a 5-man unit, you're just stacking another 10 shots on there, giving them back essentially their data sheet ability, right? And then that could become more efficient shooting as well. So the kind of fire support stacking buffs, I think I just wanted to put it here so we wouldn't forget it. Nonetheless, the transport capacity is very important in this attachment as we talk about it going forward. And I see the chat's going live, so shout out to the chat. Whoa, for all we get super chat. We'll get to you guys, don't worry. But I want to make sure I don't take forever long for the rewatch gang. So let's go to the mounted units. So I am actually pretty interested in having fun with the mounted units. Yes, and someone says Squiggoff. Yes, Squiggoff accounts for transport. He gets firing deck. Yes, before I, thank you for that. I knew the comments. Someone find to the comments right now to tell me, but thank you, live chat. That's why we do it live. So now we're talking about mounted units. So I'm a fan of mounted units in this attachment for the most part, but that's because I like mounted units when they have assault. So I want to be able to utilize assault when I do push those units out. Also, mounted units have a way of being kind of fishtailed back to objectives that I can declare a wall off them, and more. So we have starting off with the War Trike, just sticking it early. Now, I'm still on the fence. Do I want a big old fat 6-man unit? That's pretty expensive. But I'm pretty interested if instead of paying for maybe 3-man units, maybe a trike alongside a 3-man unit and then another one. Why would that be? Well, you can't always assuredly turn one, have the Grot CP, so you can give this unit a WAAAGH. They can just fly up the field, get into a fight, get stuck in. Of course, the War Trike gets +1 to hit to the unit, so the Knob and the War Trike usually put together can actually get off and then get into a fight, whether they're killing some Scout Marines or whatever it may be. They get to shoot their small arms fire as well. So I like that for the trike. He has a built-in auto advance. He's kind of fat. He gives you that I can launch off objectives if you kind of fish him, tail him back. But I always say though, his base is so freaking huge that it is hard to suggest. So nonetheless, I like bikers. So very efficient for their point cost. They have really good speed and durability right now. Again, between both of these mounted units, between the Squig boys and the war bikers, them having assault, but then also have access to, funny enough, fraggers, the stratagems, means they can actually put some crazy small arms or throw some shots downfield as well, which is fun to see. So the bikers themselves, when they get within 9, they get rapid fire, they'll get additional AP, and then they can also put fraggers on there. So they can just put a bucket of dice on people, end up getting 6 shots, 7 shots apiece. They're twin link, they get 1 AP. So if you are using it as I'm pushing onto my enemy's natural expansion, and it's been a big wall, I have a big unit coming forward of bikers and a trike, whatever, that could be pretty fun to see as well. So people always forget that even a 5-man unit means that every gun would get +1 shot from the unit that's shooting it, right? So even a 5-man unit is very important that you're getting shot at. So it feels great in that way. Let's see, what else was I looking here? Make sure I'm not missing it. Okay, sorry guys, I'm all excited. All right, cool. So then we go to the Squig boys. Now, where I'm at, I'm on the fest of even advising them, right? You guys all know that we're universally in a place that we know Squig boys suck where they're at. They need to go down on points. They're not good at what they're supposed to be good at doing. all this stuff. I have a whole video talking smack about Squig Boys, but that's not what we're here for today. We're here to talk about how I actually want to use them. And I want to use them because the Auto Advance 6. And I do want to use the small 4-man minimum sized unit, 150 points, saturating them with around the field, good toughness. They have their feel no pains. They have a bucket load of punches that they like to do. And they also, as I said, can appreciate the sustained, whether it's shooting or getting stuck in. And their weapons are nothing to put up your nose at, right? If you have a big one of these guys, you could end up in a funny situation. Not saying do this, but you could put a beast boss on Squigosaur with the ignore cover enhancement and throw your little dagger at people at a group of guys and put fraggers. Stand objectives get sustained. It's strength 5, I think, at least, an anti-vehicle, and then -1, 2 damage. You could do funny stuff like that. Totally aware. But in reality, why I'm happy about the Squig Boys in this detachment are, one, for the for the Auto Advance 6. Now, sometimes I've heard from my own gits, out to my own gits in the chats, they tell me, WAAAGH Tactics, the weakness of Squig Boys isn't their movement necessarily, it's everything else. And I'm going to say it's more of a yes and, right? Yes, their output does kind of have an issue, but their movement is also the issue. All cavalry have this movement issue in 40K right now. It's very easy for a vehicle to move around and get a line of fire. It's very easy for infantry to launch through terrain. But yet for our poor mounted units, we have to meander around objectives or kind of try to ride over it and hope that we get lucky. We're also paying for the pivot, so you lose even another inch off that. So that being said, saying that, hey, I have this unit of pigs that can auto go 6, so now it's going 16 inches, and then you're wawing, is very, very different, especially when you've actually been able to stage them somewhat in the mid-table and then launch from that position. As I said, launch, I do need launch from, well, if you have a looted objective, if you are able to, for example, maybe layout 1, if you're sitting in your home objective and you loot to your own from your deployment zone, and you kind of line your unit up to launch through that center of where the 2 home terrain pieces are from GW layout 1 out from there, you can auto advance 16 down that hard line to the middle objective and charge anything that's standing on middle objective. No diff, no wonders, no concern, no worries. And it doesn't have to be an army-wide WAAAGH. There's other objectives and missions and terrain setups as well that you might be able to fishtail your squigs back. But in reality, when you're launching them, it's actually been, for me, even those turn 3s, for example, right? After I've already called my army-wide WAAAGH turn 2, and I actually still have a pig unit that's kind of sitting back on my natural expansion. The enemy's worried about everything else that's in their face. They're trying to dislodge gas. They're trying to dislodge other Mega Knob units, trying to dislodge 20-man units of boys. They're trying to kill Zod. They're trying to kill 10-man unit flash kits, whatever there is on the way. They're not looking over there to my natural expansion, to holding my natural expansion that early in the game, thinking I'm going to go ahead and try to kill that unit as well. Sometimes they'll just like killing everything else, which means on the following turn, there's been games where, hey, turn 3, this unit of pigs that was just chilling, they're going to auto advance. They're going to get a wall. They're going to auto advance 6 now, and they're going to get stuck in. So it kind of can go hard sometimes. Very slept on unit right there. When it gets later in the game, Squig Boys start to bully once you've already declared the army-wide WAAAGH. So just food for thought. Then we go to WAAAGH Scrag Bag. I like to run him solo. I think that he just doesn't mesh with his own unit. Very poor riding, in my opinion, from GW. His base size means that he doesn't want to lose a movement by being stuck with them. He loses the toughness for being stuck with them. And then typically people want to shoot Squig Boys away because of their ability to clap back, because a lot of the time maybe it's Warhorde, they fight on death, whatever. So a lot of the time WAAAGH's ability just kind of sucks. So he plays by himself. And he plays in a way that I just said, like Squig Boys. You don't want to pay for the squigs because, well, it's hard to hide 4 squigs in your natural expansion, kind of chilling when everybody else is running away. Maz being a round base, smaller, having a 4-up invuln, all those situations means, well, he could just do exactly what I said from the Squig Boys. Turn 3, when you don't have stuff going on anymore, the main army-wide walls already happened. You launch off your natural expansion instead, and you just take Maz down the field. And it feels good in that way. Also, he's good at just kind of peeking out, maybe tempting enemies that you can try to take some shots off on him to try to take him off the field. But for his point cost and his actual size, it's hard to really trade him out for anything if you're using him in that role of like an independent fighter. Now, he's also loves reroll wounds. All that being said, Miles overall just feels just a little lackluster, but he is mounted and he still counts with this detachment, so I had to throw him in here. Then we go to Beast Boss on Squigosaur. This is one git I can't really recommend. As I said, Maz doesn't blend with his own unit. I feel like this guy doesn't blend that much. Of course, he gets +1 to the charge, so you could argue that with the auto advance 6, that's interesting. You could argue that he holds your redeploy enhancement. You could argue that he holds your ignore cover. So if your squigs run up, they can throw some spears at someone and try to chip stuff down. All of those are debatable, not necessarily very practical. Therefore, I'm just going to say I don't recommend him that much. Doesn't mean don't play him. Doesn't if you only got 1,000 points and you're just trying to get stuck in, don't let it ruin everything for you. But I'm just giving to the mass majority of gets. I'm not really feeling Squighog on Squigosaur. He needs a Beast Boss Squigosaur. He needs a huge rewrite. Then we go to the Death Coptas last, but certainly not least. They are vehicles. Even I put them unmounted, so they don't get the mounted toughness, but I just want to throw them in here. So mind you, they're not mounted. They're vehicles. I'm aware. Don't crump me. But they kind of fall in line with when you stick all these toughness together, maybe drizzle some of those walkers in there. You'll see you got a lot of good T6, T7, T8 sometimes roaming around the field in saturation and small units. And that in itself becomes interesting when you're also able to stack walls on each of these units throughout the phases, not even getting to the Meganauts, which we're going to move on to now. So mind you that, yes, these units without a wall kind of suck. But if you can make any of these units have a wall 1 additional turn for their inbone, for their ability to be fast, for their ability to have output and soak up enemy damage, these units all have their own way and their own interesting place. Then we move on to the Krew choices, right? So this is the Freebooter Krew choices. These are the infantry choices. This is kind of like how I would space out my infantry options if I was to choose them. I know the mech guns in this. I don't care. That's why I felt like putting them. So I did break it down into some more categories as well, but still want to keep it simple. So we got the DACA, we got the getting stuck in lands for combat, and then we got the board control centric gets, right? So right off the bat, when you are choosing your looted objective, one of the ways, and we'll talk about this in tempo as well, is that there's an argument that you'll say, well, turn 1 will be my home, turn 2, I'll pick some objective that I can reach with my truck, disembark my gets, and then shoot you. So when we're talking about these infantry combo units, you can take that into consideration if you want. That's generally how, for example, the Ludas are going to be considered. They're going to be looking at a unit that is on an objective. So you can say, well, my truck drove out, Ludas jumped out, and they gained line of fire to the enemy's natural, and they shot those gets. Or the enemy put some stuff in the middle, and I did the same thing. Cool. Of course, the combo of ignore cover on the SAG or whatever it may be is interesting. For the Looter Krew, I do think you need to go up to a 10-man generally to get some value out of them. Now, then we move on to the 3 mech guns. Now, if you have a infantry leader attached to your mech guns, then they actually can use the detachment ability. So if you put a mech on them, you put them and they're standing on your home objective, you can choose your home objective, and then they can shoot off your home objective. That's kind of cool. They can also have the ignore cover ability, which is awesome for maybe your custom mega blasters on your flash on your mech guns, your bubble chuckas, your smasher guns. They could become interesting in that way too for your DACA choices. Then you have the tank busters. If you guys know me, that's something that I'm constantly on the fence about right now, right? Is I understand that we're paying a hefty penny for tank busters and the shock attack gun. I understand that they are quite unreliable, to be honest, right? But there's something to say when you choose that looted objective, get your tank buster, stand on it, and then shoot an enemy vehicle with sustain. That is highly addicting and very, very powerful. So I don't think you necessarily need the ignore cover here because they have too much cost at that point. And if you really played with this unit enough, the real value is the shock attack gun, not the tank busters themselves. So the shock attack gun a lot of the time is the one that's just blending through the enemy, problematic unit. So tank busters are cool, very expensive, but if you can shoot something that's on a looted objective or yourself stand on it, that's what's nice. And the reason I do end up picking some DACA in my army with this detachment is because you aren't always going to be able to choose the enemy's natural and then shoot stuff that's interesting there. You might need to choose an objective you can reach, stand on that objective, and then rain DACA down from that objective. So there are those forward pushing, jump out, and then shoot, right? Then we go to the flash gets. So, as my friend Tom Godfrey said, there's something wrong with the writing when flash gets. You write a freebooter detachment, and the flash gets ends up thinking of it as its fourth best detachment, right? So when you look at flash gets, you think of this detachment because of the aesthetics and the name and the artwork. In reality, flash gets don't get that much from this detachment, so they're not so mandatory. You don't need to saturate them on your army. You don't need to bring 30. You don't need to bring whatever 20. I've seen a bunch of people start like, all right, start on my list with 30 looters, 30 flash gets. I got it. No, I don't think you do. I don't think you do. So I think totally stick to this typical, flash gets are a great data sheet for what they are. Bring a 5-man for SWAT teams. You can bring a 10 if you really are interested in using the Fragger's ability. If you play on those kind of metas that you can take advantage of that. They also like re-rolling wounds if you're on a looted objective. That's really cool too. I've had fun with that as well. But don't oversaturate it. If you're gonna do it, sure, you can use them for firing deck potential. You can use them for SWAT team potential, but you don't need to oversaturate your list with the flash gets. Then the burner boys. Burner boys are funny because they can use the fragger strat as well. So you're gonna get all these torrent guns, and they can just make it rain with +2, +1 shots on all their burners. A lot of the time, I'm just seeing 5-man units if you're using for SWAT team trucks ability. They're already really kind of slow. They don't have assault. So again, maybe this is more interesting as a firing deck capability on your truck in that case. But hey, and then shock attack gun, because shock attack gun goes great on any of those units. If you're considering the Big Mac is typically for the mech gun. And there's some argument, of course, for gas units and whatever, but we're talking about DACA right now. I do have the mech there near the DACA because we've been talking about firing decks so much. So he has been kind of incorporated to some lists here and there, but I haven't been brought him personally that much, just throwing him out there for food for thought. Then we go to the getting stuck inlands, right? These are all units that really appreciate the combos that we can actually stick in this detachment, right? So obviously the first one is you got 10 snaggas and a beast boss, or 20 snaggas, whatever. They love sustain, they love re-rolling wounds, and they obviously, any infantry unit loves an auto advance 6. So if you can get 10, 20 snaggas disembarking from a transport, a rig, a truck, and then they just shuffle their way down the field, fantastic. Always feel really, really good when you can get a unit that's efficient into the field, into a fight. Then you have Breaker Boys. I really feel like Breaker Boys are interesting for this, typically because the auto advance 6. They're kind of the unit that is very, very gentle and soft. It can't really afford to stage up too aggressively sometimes. Therefore, them getting out, hoofing it downfield 14 inches and just making contact with that ideal target. They got built-in re-roll charges. Okay, that's really nice because then you know it's worth it with the re-roll advance, and then you already have the built-in charge. So okay, that's kind of stacking the ability there. Love it. Of course, re-rolling wounds. So you talk about a Norn Emissary. Oh my goodness, dude. Norn Emissary with Breaker Boys with re-roll wounds and sustain. Whoa, that's just you're knocking this whole head off, right? So of course I love that. Then we go to the mega knobs. Now this can be broken down into different ways. You can say I'm going to bring 5 mega knobs with a mega knob inside of a truck, a mega boss, excuse me. 5 mega knobs and a mega boss inside of a truck. They're going to jump out 3, auto advance 6, 14-inch movement, bam, mega knobs getting down the field with their wall, happy all day. That's cool. The main, and we'll talk about it more and unpack it more, the main combo we like to see and talk about is maybe the mega mech with 5 to 6 mega knobs within the transport. But we'll talk about that more in a little bit. And then we have Gaz. The fact that Gaz, he can be in a 20-man unit, fish back to an objective and declare the wall, have Makari's banner going up, have his 5-up invuln up so that he can't be initiated on as first. If it's a 6-man unit of mega knobs, he can auto advance quickly into a safe spot. And have already declared his wall, like I said as well. So he has his 5-up invuln up and his profile smaller. And then from there, whenever you know that you can get gas automatically moving 6, but even more so your enemy knows that you can get any of these units going automatic 6, it's very troubling for the opponent when they're talking about distance managing, pre-measurements, threat ranges, stuff like that. And then we have war bosses. And just to break it down simply, I like war bosses in 5-man unit. You got 10-man unit boys here. You got some knobs. You can just say with the breaker boys. Of course, I think about breaker boys and war bosses. You look at my videos with them. I've always said I like war bosses on my breaker boys. I'm never a huge fan of just the 6-mans on their own. So just assume that I'm talking about they're gonna have knobs. You're probably gonna have 10 boys with them. You're gonna have some breakers with them. I favor breakers over knobs currently by far in the meta. Even in this detachment and everything, you could argue for the knobs because you could reroll wounds and it makes it for their their bad strength. But overall, I'm feeling war bosses because whenever you give a war boss just a law, right? Like I spoke about late game, if you're going to, have some boys sticking something or everybody else is running away, and then your wall on eventually it gets activated by your war boss and he moves 6 with the boys, that's sick, even late game. But then we go to the board control. Now, what do I mean by the board control units? We've been talking about moving 6. We've been talking about, making contact and re-rolling advances. But in reality, we have a mixture here of redeploy and the auto advance 6 because, the redeploy we talked about 30 minutes ago now. But the redeploy has been on my mind this whole time because that's how you make your board control and your threat units work. Now, you cannot redeploy a unit into a transport, for example. So you have to be a sneaky, clever get with how you want to do this. Now, the most obvious is if I'm going first, I can redeploy Gas, boom, right to the front line. I can redeploy Snicker out somewhere where he's gonna love the auto advance scout 9. But the other things that I like to do here is with my commandos. So if it's an army, let's say a Tau, right? And I know that the infiltration game is going to be very important, but I also know controlling the firing lanes is going to be very important. I like to keep my Mandos possibly as that 10-man unit, right? And follow me here. I know there's a lot of conditions, but it's fine. You go first. Well, first of all, if you deploy first, if you're lucky enough, you can deny most of the enemy's mid-table capability or access from their scouts. From their own infiltrations. And then 2, when it's time for you to redeploy, you can, and you're going first, you can choose an objective in no man's land, redeploy your commandos onto the objective in no man's land, just simply fishtailing to it, declare a WAAAGH, and then get stuck in. Another thing you can do, which I've personally done myself, because I know the enemy wants to push an objective, I know they want to stage or get into a firing lane. I end up getting lucky enough to go first with some of my commandos. I redeploy them into a good position. I auto advance 6, and I just stand in the firing lane so the enemy can't get their truck, can't get their walkers, can't get their tanks into position. Maybe I align the wall so the enemy can't run through it and get into the center staging ruin to counterattack Gaz or something like that. There's really cool redeploying shenanigans that you can then use onto redeploying in an offensive, aggressive manner if you go first. If it's secondarily, well, then that means you can still use your Mandos to deny enemy infiltration and then simply redeploy them into a different spot. And then you can be thinking, well, I can redeploy my Gas into a position where I'm going to auto advance 6 into a safe rune or whatever it may be in that case. So you can also obviously feint the opponent. So put Zod and Gas directly on the line and then just pull them back. So yeah, no problem with that. Like I said before, another thing here is that your Storm Boys can auto advance 6. So there's not too many units Storm Boys actually threaten or scare. But it's about touching sometimes. It's about projecting threat ranges. It could be about killing a small trash unit of Fenrisian Wolves or something. Cool, whatever. They're auto advancing 6 to deny an enemy deep strike. Could be fantastic in that way as well. So the fact that Storm Boys have all game chart auto advance and charging, and you could just throw 6 on there, so you have an automatic flying super fast unit, that could be very interesting. That ends up usually coming to play at like turn 4 for me, for the most part, where enemies don't have much stuff left. And I go, oh, you had to hold that one objective with one of your models, your little trash unit. Okay, well, I'm going to move auto advance 6, go attack that little dude, and then pick him up for my assassinate. So that can come up in too. Very fun though when I've been able to use that. Then we go into the Krew combination. So just to kind of lay it out more clearly for the gits, like I already iterated, we have the Big Mech and Mega Armor plus 6 Mega Knobs, and you can choose the redeploy. Actually, I put either or, but you can choose to put the redeploy on this unit because it's already defensively built up with the 4-up invuln and such, and then you can redeploy it in a way that it can auto advance into a safer position. Now, if you have the redeploy, it's not going to be active if you're inside of a wagon. So keep that in mind. I should have worded that nicely, but nonetheless, you put this in a wagon. Now, it does take 12 seats, but that means you could just stick another kind of SWAT team in there. You could end up choosing Breaker Boys, Knobs, Flash Kits, Burner Boys, whatever to go alongside your wagon. A lot of the time, this unit, like I said, the Big Mech and Mega Armor, he's going to be the turn 3 WAAAGH strat. So everybody goes forward, gets in the WAAAGH, maybe your wagon itself move forward onto your natural expansion, or it's dropped off some the Mega Knobs onto your natural expansion, and then it's run off to the middle, whatever it may be. Maybe it was staging in the middle already, and Storm Boys were jumping out of it and launching up the field. That's always another cool thing that you could do as well. But say that it's turn 3, WAAAGH has gone forward, your gas has gone forward, maybe your pig, maybe your other infantry units, whatever you've been using has gone forward and gotten a fight, getting stuck. Now the enemy is trying to, gather their forces to push your main WAAAGH force off them, retake the mid table. Well, here comes 6 Mega Knobs and a Big Mech and Mega Armor. They're going to gain a WAAAGH, auto advance 6, and smash into the enemy lines with a 5 Feel No Pain and do it all over again. Maybe they'll actually push to the enemy's home objective or start pushing closer to it. And then, of course, like I said, you have the DACA wagon. Just wanted to reiterate that. You could choose to just take off Ard Case, have firing deck open to this, put Ludus on the side of it, flash kits. You could put Big Mech and Mega Armor with 5 Mega Knobs in there, and then put 10 flash kits in there. Use the firing deck as you move around, get the dudes out so they have some fire support alongside them. So much fun little shenanigans you can do there. You have the 10 looters with the shock attack gun and ignore cover. Again, for firing deck, for fraggers. You can put them in a truck. The truck obviously is fast enough to actually gain line of fire to shoot enemies' natural expansion, to start picking up those smaller units with all your shots when you can set fraggers up. I personally like tank busters and shock attack guns when you can actually stand on the objective. Now, I should have said this earlier when I was talking about DACA. The one issue I've been not been having, but I've been very aware of is if you want to move out to an objective that's a looted objective and stand on it and shoot off of it, well, a lot of enemies have reroll capabilities when an enemy's on an objective, right? So you have to be aware of that, of course. Then you have Gaz, 20 boys, usually the pain boy, plus Bionic Workshop. So people will like take that a lot of the time in this detachment because there's a chance you could stack the speed, you could stack the strength to get the new even better crumping strength thresholds. There's a chance that you can make your Mega Knobs, your Power Claws and the Pain Boy in them even more effectively. So a lot of good stuff that you can get stacked up there. People like to do, and it's only 15 points. Huge profile, huge enemy attention gathering. By the time they dislodge 20 boys and the gas and the pain boys, then you have the first unit we talked about coming around the side, right? Then we go to gas plus 6 Mega Knobs. So this is just a side thing. Again, another thing that I like to see, because you can give them the WAAAGH, then the Mega Knobs feel great. You're not paying for the Pain Boy because they gives it to him, so he's harder to kill. He's up to T6 as well, so that's pretty nice too. That makes him a little bit more tougher to become assassinated or killed. Let's say it's against like head takers, for example, from Space Wolves. I believe they're only strength 5. If you're T6 and you have a 5 Feel No Pain, good chance they're actually not even blending through that, even if they try to precision out Gaz. Then we go to the 10 snaggers and the beast boss. Like I said, they're gaining off Gaz ability. If he's nearby as well, they can auto advance 6, which feels great, because you could be using your main WAAAGH to activate Makari's banner, then sending these 20 gets forward as Gaz is somewhat safe, fishtailing to your natural expansion so that he can declare a WAAAGH turn 3 as everybody else has gone forward, and then your snaggers have already made it very far up the field, really utilized their all-C and their punches. And then you have the War Boss and Breakers and Boys and Knobs, as I already demonstrated. But how does this actually win, right? And I had to kind of really think this through from the games I got through, and that's not so that's actually applicable for Zca's. One, But to simplify, right? We have constant pressure between. I can early game maybe set up some redeploys, set up some stages where I'm fishtailing back to an objective that I can either shoot off or declare a wall off and then push into you. My auto advanced sixes could become interesting to get into your fire lanes, to deny your deep strikes. If it's a unit like, well, I know you have a 10-man unit of the Space Wolf Terminators, and they're going to come in one turn early, and I know that you're going to fall in this very obvious field of positioning. Maybe I'll just auto advance 6, my 5 Mandos or Storm Boys, and take up that space. So the constant pressure can be either for taking the board or for stopping them from getting in their staging positions to attack you, and then you stage up fully and then declare your wall to hit them. And then also constant pressure means that I do kind of keep stuff a little bit on the back end to declare a wall later in the game from that unit when I build my list. So whether it's another Mega Knob unit, if it's a solo Maz, if it's a weird Squig Hog boy, whatever, if I have something that's able to stay safe and hidden, not just simply fall over or simply be weak at fighting, I can declare a wall on that unit and keep it going for more momentum, because a lot of the time once your wall is over, people are like, all right, I just systematically deconstruct with tier and then I score what I got to do. Well, not if I could just raw another whole another unit into you and also take up all the space I want to take with it with the auto advance 6. So it's fantastic, but that's, you got to build that into your list for constant pressure. The combined arms comes into, you put just enough shooting on your list, so you have the flexibility of, I'm going to stand on this and shoot off of it, or I'm going to get in a position and shoot you because you're standing on it. And that's enough for maybe 1 or 2 turns of interesting shooting. Unless you're, like we said, taking advantage of firing deck on a truck, then you might be able to use more shooting because you're using your trucks as a safe position. Flexibility in the looted objective, as I mentioned earlier, is pretty much me just describing the combined arms aspect and the constant pressure, right? Whether it's flexibility because I got to go first and throw these Mandos at you, or flexibility because I got a trike and I'm gonna go, or I gotta actually shoot you, so I'm gonna throw these looters over here. Whatever the flexibility is, I can use my looted objective to either stage off, or I can use it to project my, go get myself. Sorry, project my power and push you off. Sorry, said that wrong. Next is stratagem discipline. This, oh my goodness, this detachment, you're just eating RCP, right? It felt better than Mordaka because Mordaka was spending 2 on the same strat all the time. So I really didn't get to choose other stratagems at times. This one, because it's just 1, I did have good amount of time of like, okay, I got like 3 CP in my pocket. I can work this out. That felt good, but it does require CP discipline. So when you're building your units, like when I mentioned, okay, auto advance 6 on Breaker Boys, well, they can re-roll their charge. So I feel better getting into them knowing they can do that. So have those built in the back of your head, like, okay, this unit is already kind of fast, or this unit can fly, already advance in charge, or can get in good positioning when you want to apply the stratagems to them, right? So you don't always want to use fraggers because you might need those strats later, but you could use it just like once every game. So speed is another thing. I like to pick units that are somewhat relatively fast already, or I have units like transports and such that can kind of project some sort of speed. So speed's very, very important in this because it's compounding your wall effect and your auto advance 6 effect. And of course, the funny, cheeky answer is go first, right? Because how it's written currently, going first is a strong factor, but we can still kind of talk out the looted tempo of the looted objective. This isn't going to be perfect. Hopefully it helps you a little bit. If it doesn't, sorry, I tried last minute. So let's just say this is how we're playing on our head. If this is true, then I do this. If not, then I do this. It's kind of how this should look in your brain. So let's say that I go first and I'm going to choose the no man's land objective for my looted objective. I'm going to redeploy Mandos, like I said, and try to get a wall. Sometimes I don't even call a wall with them. I just use a CP in advance 6 and stand in the way. I declare no man's land because, hey, I know that the enemy has an objective that they like to stand near or on, and I think I can get my looted objective, my skirmish units to it to shoot at you, whether it's some bikers, and my bikers can run onto it for sustain, shoot at you with their DACA, and then charge into you. Maybe, right? But then you're not doing it from your home, so that's harder to project on bikers. That's more likely on like a Storm Boy unit, for example. Sorry for a skirmish. And then when I said DACA, when I say no man's land DACA, it means if for some reason I'm feeling like a crazy git, not recommending this, but if I throw a unit out, it jumps out onto an objective and shoots at you. That's option 1. But then here's the most likely option. If you go round one, you use your home objective as your looted objective. So let's say you'll gas up, right? When I mean gas up, it means I'll declare a wall for gas for 1 CP, and I'll stage him up, right? He gets his defense up, he has his banner up. I have a nice bubble of, if you come within range of this, I'm more killy and I'm pretty tough. You could also use it to dock off your home objective, as we mentioned. So maybe you choose your home turn 1 because you want to shoot off it, or you tail back to wall. So there were times where I would tail back my bikers, my squig hog boys to my home objective, and then I would be able to project, well, if you run towards the middle, I might declare a wall at this unit, auto advance 6, and then be able to threaten you with a 6-inch charge on anybody standing near. That's fine too, but not always the case. But these are the options you should be thinking in your head when you're deploying and building out your list. Then you go to round two, excuse me. So you go to round 2. Let's say that even if it's you say you know you're going first. Obviously, you're going to pick the enemy's natural expansion or the middle objective. You're going to declare a wall, or you're going to know it's an objective you can shoot off and still declare a wall, and then you're not going to fight on. You know that you're not going to fight on their objective because they put a trash unit there. So instead, you chose a middle objective so that you can shoot off it with your tank busters, for example. But let's say that it's round 2 and you're not in range of a good wall yet. The enemy didn't really played a little bit cagey. They know you're really fast. They know you have an auto advance 6. They know you have gas. And they know they can kind of play the longer game because of the mission. Well, maybe round 2 should be your natural expansion where you use it as a launch pad instead. Whether it's I have a unit standing here that can declare a wall and go running off it, or I have a unit that's going to move up, stand on this, and shoot at you because you were played kind of safely. So say it's layout 1 and I move past my natural expansion. I move on to my natural expansion with maybe a snick route or something. They didn't really respond. Well, my truck drove past that mid-table line, disembarked the gets, and then I shot down the enemy's backfield with it on layout 1 for GW. It could be used as a passive launching pad or dock pad instead. But let's say you go into round 3. Now it's post-wall, right? As I mentioned before, if it's post-wall, then you can have the Meganauts with the Big Mech and Mega Armor standing on your natural expansion, and then they'll declare the wall, or Maz, or Squigs, or a Biker, or a Walker. Like, there's a bunch of weird little units you could try to get that away with, but it has to be that you have saturated the field with other like toughness units, because if not, then they're like, oh, I'll just shoot that thing over there with my 1 anti-tank gun. It's like, okay, that was obvious then, right? So there should be other stuff that's a similar stat profile and durability to kind of declare this post-wall. And then, of course, if it's round 3 and the enemy hasn't, you should already declare a wall by then. Not always the case, but as we said before, and you rinse and repeat. So it's easier said than done, but this is just for people who haven't played it yet and they may be trying to get a thought for it. Then we go to the pros and cons. So pros, in my opinion, are the stratagems. I think the stratagems are very fun. When I can declare wall, move fast 6, or defraggers is a super unique stratagem in the game. So those actually are what's making me play, not really the detachment ability that much. It's more of the stratagems are making me interested in this detachment. It's a little bit different of a speed and style of play and your choice options, even though it's still a little lackluster in the damage in some cases, right? Then we go to the continuous momentum aspect, the fact that if the enemy wants to come towards my Mandos and kill my Mandos, well, you might have just gone for my trap where I can declare a wall with a different unit, auto advance 6, and get you and punish you, or retake that position for you trying to kill my commandos. And then in response, I could also do a late game wall with the megas, with the squig, everything I've already mentioned before. So the continuous momentum aspect is actually fun for me. The fact that the enemy's like, oh shoot, I left that thing alive. He can still continue to wall and run at me. What the? Right? That's been so fun every time it's come up. The combined arms flexibility to where, okay, I'm going to shoot at you and I have a little bit of buffs, or I'm going to run at you and I want these buffs, has been kind of fun. It's not, okay, I'm just playing Warhorde where nothing gets a buff from shooting, or, oh, I'm playing Bully Boys where nothing gets a buff from shooting. Oh, more the Hunt, no buffs from shooting. But it's also, we'll talk about more. But then we go to the speed aspect. I think because of the speed part of the wall, not advanced 6, it means that usually I'm building around somewhat speedier units, which means all in all, my list don't feel that slow. So those have been the pros, the enjoyable parts, the things I like about this list I've been incorporating. As for the cons, hyper CP reliance. So whenever I knew there's a vector round or something, I had to double check and be considerate of that. But also just I had to be disciplined in how I sent my SPP, because if I'm off by one, then all my ability to continue momentum has now fallen away. Bad looted objective timing, just objectively speaking, that sucks. That totally sucks. And if GW slightly tweaks it, this could very much be a very cool objective in that case. Another thing is not enough DACA support, in my opinion. Like I said, that looted or the flash kit objective for 4+ anti-vehicle, it needed some kind of additional buff on there, whether it's, you know, loot flash kits count as stationary and vehicle 4+. Even then, because we said the save issue is an issue, but it still feels like it's just not enough buffs for DACA support, even though it wants to. It's like, and so moving on to the last thing, it's so heavily balanced about the looted objective that it's hard to actually conduct the combined arms aspect sometimes in the same phase with the same unit. Sorry, in the same phase, in the same turn with the same unit. So it's like, okay, I'm back here, I'm gonna shoot with my tank busters, but then my other stuff's running over there to punch you, and it has a wall activated, but it's not fighting on a looted objective, right? It might be that case. So it's too balanced around the looted objective where I can't do both for the combined arm aspect, so I never really peak in what I'm trying to do. Those are just my straightforward, honest points of view. I have fun with it, but it's so restricted in those ways that it stops it from pushing up to being a highly competitive detachment in most ways. Doesn't mean I think it's bad, doesn't mean you shouldn't play it. Just speaking matter of fact and honestly for your gets, because that's what we do around here, right? So with that being said, I think that kind of covers the vast majority of what I have to say about this detachment, the pros, the cons. If you think there's anything that I left out, then we're moving over to the live comments and interactions right now. So feel free to correct me, argue with me, get your teeth knocked out, whatever you got to do. Thank you for Rewatch Gang, because I appreciate you gets. Of course, remember we got the paint competition, Bork and Gorkana. It can be a proxy, it could be a print, but it's due and it should look appropriate and be the appropriate scale. So of course, put that on Facebook or our Discord, because we got to see what's going on there. So let's get stuck in with the Freebooter comments. So right off the bat, we got our boy Bosch Via. This ECOP still can't give membership for some reason, but wanted to say hi. Whoa, let's go. I don't know, you've been around for a long time. Maybe your settings, I still don't understand why either you get, but all the love and thank you for the support. Hopefully you're having fun with the new detachment, or at least getting stuck in here in the chat. Of course, the Bad Dog with 5 Wall Tactic memberships, getting your back E-Cop. Thank you very much, Bad Dog. Super supportive as always. And hopefully you're playing with the new detachment a little bit and getting stuck in like a bad dog. So thank you, Get. That means a lot for you guys and helps support the channel a lot. I'm going to make sure I can make some more content. Thank you. It means a lot. Very humbling every single time you guys support. Other people are saying, does it work? Another thing here, funny, 20 sluggers suddenly have 60 to 100 shots. Yeah, what were some people, funnily enough, saying? You could take Zod and the Squig Hog, the Zod, the Grots, give each one of their guns blast, so then they go to 3 shots each Grot. So that's hilarious. Then each Grot gets 2 shots. And then they start just firing up at or if it's a 20-man unit, they get like 4 shots if they're shooting like a unit of guardsmen. So people have been saying the math about that. You could do shooter boys, get freaking obnoxious and silly with it. Like I said, a 10-man unit of flash kits, if they get 2 blasts, they can get 6 shots a piece per model. So 6 times 10, 60 shots on your flash kits with sustain would be fantastic. So there's a bunch of fun, super fun fragger situations. I mean, even if you're shooting at a 5-man unit, giving all your units, like if it's a 10-man unit, 10 more shots on that unit feels way better. So yeah, I've been enjoying that fraggers ability a lot when it comes up. Another funny thing for fraggers, and I didn't say this before, but just because we're here in the live chat, right? A funny thing that I with fraggers is like 6 mega knobs with their dev guns, with the Big Mac and Mega Armor 3-roll 1, stand on an objective, get fraggers, shoot it using a Terminators, and then they average something like 4. It depends on the size of the unit, right? But like 4 to 8 dev wounds in their DACA shooting into a Terminator unit, not including whatever the custom Mega Blaster does. Right? So it's like each guy gets one shot, but if you're in rapid fire, it's 2. And then if you're shooting a blast target, you can get up to 4. And then they're standing objective and they're re-rolling 1s. And then every 4+ is a dev shot. So yeah, there's a bunch of funny, weird stuff you can get. Deckers on the burners, baby, is very fun for the re-roll wounds. I think burners overall, I could have kind of spoken more about burners, but I just passed them up. I think burners, one, because they hit on 4s. I can't, and they only get 2 punches apiece. I can't in good conscience give them a bunch of credit for like being a CP option. That's why I mentioned they're inside of a transport, because then it's like, okay, there might be other units in there that are getting benefits from it. Or if they are a 10-man unit and they're in a transport and they could do their thing twice, then maybe cool. Re-rolling wound could be cool because they have 2 AP, but they're like hitting on 4s and then they're strength 4 and then they only got 2 punches apiece. In good conscience, I can't necessarily recommend them for that, but there is something there to be talked about. Oh my gosh, my boy Arcane said it first. I'm a pretty big fan of Mega Knobs getting their blast, taking anti-dev to 15 to 20. Maybe if you're talking about like on a 20-man unit, you can spike that high. Yeah, for sure. But it is very, very fun. But thank you, Arcane. Whoa, Arcane, because that's what I was messing with the most, dude. I was like, I don't know, man. I kind of want to run these 6 Mega Knobs because I just want to look at someone's Space Marines and be like, yeah, watch this. And then I kill multiple dev wounds on their dudes. Oh, that'd be so fun. Just be like, oh, sorry. That unit's supposed to be durable. Not anymore. There's something to say, though, that I also want to do that because when I charge into them, I might not hurt them that well. Right? So I might need to shoot them, those Terminators like that, so I can kill enough of them to win the fight. Yeah, I wish Maz had Lona rather than leader, just be a brutal attack dog. Yeah, that's really what he needs to be like. He needs to act as like a demon prince, quote unquote, where he's just a big white squig. He just runs around crumbing people on his own, and he goes to his old data sheet and just leave him like that. Absolutely what Maz should be now. And that's kind of how I like to play him anyways. Yeah, and you cannot overwatch your transports. Yeah, I get 5 Mega Knives rapid fire with 10 additional 1 per 2. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it does go off on Terminator units. Absolutely. It's something like 4 to 8 dev wounds on average. Of course, you can spike. It's some weird, if it's 5 units, if it's 5-man unit using fraggers, it's like 4. If it's a 10-man unit, it's like 8, and they can even go up. So very fun on that. I'm here for it. I'm fun with this detachment. If I had to rank it, it's somewhere in like the middle tier of the detachments for orcs. I still say like Warhorde, Speed Freaks, Dread Mob, but Warhorde, Speed Freaks, maybe even the Hunt, maybe are a little. I don't know about the Hunt. I might have been pushing it. I'd say Green Tide. So like Warhorde, Green Tide. Still gonna say Dread Mob. Dread Mob, I'd say are still above this detachment. I'm trying to think whether the detachment might be above it. I don't know. Then everybody else kind of falls right around there and below it. So it's not as bad as we kind of thought when we first went off on it. A little better than that. Shout out to the Gits that are going to be running at events. I'm going to run it as some RTTs, do some after action report. Sorry for all the content being laid off. I got my eye messed up. But don't worry. We're back. We're getting stuck in. We're making everything brand new. And the new detachment has given me a reason to use my pigs and my squigs. So if I did a good job, leave a like, subscribe, share it to the Gits. Let's grow this community. We're almost at 8K. And there's only one thing to keep in mind is don't cross our wall because we're not Katifa. Whoa.